All right. So I was telling Amy before you guys got here that this is going to be a McDonald's drive-through version. A lot of material and try to do it in an hour, but there's no way that a person could, take it all in and get a real grasp of it. So, um, any areas that you guys have a particular interest in knowing more about, maybe I can do a follow-up class at some point or something like that. So just a McDonald's drive-through version today of basics. So, Patty, you're familiar with Unity. Susan, you're kind of familiar with Unity, right?
Yes.
Even seasoned Unity folks who have been with Unity for years often get asked the question, well, what is Unity all about? And even if you've been with Unity for years, a lot of times we stumble with how to say it in simplified terms because Unity has it can be this or it can be that depending on what the ministry is at that particular Unity. But I'll start with it was founded by Myrtle and Charles Fillmore. So there's the co-founders way back about 100 years ago, I think. And they were sweethearts and got married and founded it back in Lee's Summit near Kansas City, Missouri. It's Unity Village campus. It's 58 acres. And when you walk on that campus, you just get a feeling of like Myrtle had a rose garden and it has a covering over it and then chairs in there and you sit in you could just feel the energy. And they have 5 chapels and when I go back there, I always like to go walk around and go in each chapel and spend some time there. But my favorite is this little tiny one that just has 6 really comfy chairs, and they're in burgundy velvet, and it's called the Peace Chapel. And it has been open all these years, 24/7. And you walk in there and sit down, and you really feel the energy of it, and it's just a fabulous thing. And if you look over here, can you see my mouse hovering over this right here?
Yes.
That is Silent Unity. And so they're up in a big tower and it's lit all night long and it's 24/7. They're praying, receiving phone calls and written prayer requests and holding vigil over those prayer requests. So, although right now during COVID, many of them are doing the work from their homes. So they are famous on campus for their rose gardens and all of these water fountains. It's just a marvelous place to go. This particular bridge is called the Bridge of Faith. Some beautiful bridges on campus. And that's me at Unity Worldwide Ministries and Spiritual Institute, where I did my seminary. So most of it was online, but we did have to go back and do intensives to show the teachers what we were learning was working, like how to give a talk and how to do powerful prayer and how to, well, all that kind of stuff. So when we students would be on the internet and we'd see each other like on a Zoom format, we'd go back there and we'd actually see each other's whole person. It was just a joy. And we connected somehow, even on the internet. So it's, I have relationships with those fellow students that will be forever. Unity was founded in prayer. Myrtle had tuberculosis, and she did all the prayers and all the steps that were recommended, and she still wasn't getting better. So she went in, and she said, "What is going on?" And so she started suddenly forgiving herself for abusing her body. And she started praying health and healing and life energy into every cell of her body. Please forgive me for not taking care of you better. But it was an everyday thing. It was an ongoing thing. It wasn't just once in a while. And after a couple of years, she did recover. And back then, tuberculosis was a death sentence. It's no longer that, but it was back then. So when she died years and years later, it was not of tuberculosis. So she actually was able to heal herself just by praying in that way. But again, it wasn't just a once in a while thing. And so unity is founded in prayer. And we have this silent unity. See, that's a picture of the tower where they hold vigil. And so you can pray, you can call them 24/7, 1-800-NOW-PRAY. And it's just a wonderful experience. If you've never done that, I totally recommend doing that. Then they became doing publications like the Unity Magazine and books like Practical Metaphysics and the Daily Word Magazine and all kinds of booklets with just inspirational, spiritual messages, healing. And underneath the Unity campus, it's back in Kansas City, so they have tornadoes. And so underneath it, underground, you can go to tunnels to one building to the next. And there's massive printing presses and mailing out centers where for years, that was what they were all about, just mailing out material. They still do today, but not to the degree that they did then. So Unity's basic teaching is that of metaphysics. Have you all heard that term, metaphysics?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And that you could say that's our theology. And it's just based on, there's a deeper meaning than what you see with, or think, feel, or hear with your senses. The meaning goes beyond what we see, taste, feel. So we go deeper. Am I going too fast?
No, that's fine.
Yeah, for me. Some Unity centers are interfaith. They like to honor the kernels of truth that are present in all religions. And some are not. Some say more based in Christianity. And within our own Unity community, I had another minister who was retired, and she was more based in Christianity, and I'm more interfaith. And she didn't like sometimes some of the things that I did and said, only because our values were different. So it kind of depends on who's the current minister, what the culture of that community is. But when we hire ministers, you want to look at a good match between the culture of the Unity, that particular Unity church, if you want to call it a church. Some don't even like to call it a church. Some like to call it spiritual center. And you want it to match. Our community is just so varied. Some really like the basic Christian. We follow the teachings of Jesus, and that's Christian based. And some go, no, we honor the kernels of truth in all religions. And so you might find a Unity church that you walk in and there's pews and songbooks and crosses and Bibles. And 2 hours away, you find one that has none of that. And so it's just very varied. And that's why it's so hard to define what is Unity all about. But I have some ideas which I'll share with you. But a lot of us really love to interpret the Bible metaphysically, meaning let's look at what that story is saying and go deeper about what it really means in terms of how we're living our life and what it says to us about us and how we can better live our life and have a better life. So a lot of us really love a metaphysical interpretation of the Bible. Now, the Fillmores also had an influence in Eastern philosophy. There's an organization called Parliament of World Religions. And they last year they met in Toronto, Canada, and I went, and they had religious people from all over the world. And I love seeing this one guy. He was from the Amazons, and he was walking down the street in Toronto in full dress. And then I went to a Quaker service. I went to just all you get to experience it all. And the first one was in New York City back in the maybe 150 years ago. And they introduced Yogananda from the Hindu religion. He came and gave a talk, and the Fillmores were there, and they really were intrigued by that. So we do have an influence of Eastern philosophy in there. What about psychics and crystals and the occult? The Fillmores did. They looked at all religions. They looked at the occult, But at some point they decided, well, all that is very intriguing and we like to take kernels from it all, but we really need to focus. And so they decided their focus would be on the teachings of Jesus because they thought he was the master teacher. I went to a Hindu, Ananda, that's up in Nevada City, Grass Valley area. It's a Hindu retreat center. And I went to their Sunday service. And even though they had up on the altar pictures of their yogis, at the pinnacle was a picture of Jesus. So they also consider him to be a master teacher. So that's what the Fillmores decided. And so that's why we say we have roots in Christianity. Any questions, comments, surprises? And if you want me to mail you these slides, I can certainly do that. So are we a church or are we an education teaching center? So some people in Unity don't want to use the word church or God because they feel like for many people, there's so much baggage attached to that that's painful, and like being told you're a sinner because you don't believe like I do and you're going to hell, and the hypocrisy. And so for many of us, like me, I grew up in a real strict fundamentalist religion. It was Baptist, but it was not only Baptist, it was called Primitive Baptist. Wow. And I had preachers that were uncles and grandfathers, and that talk went on. And like my dad would say to me, when I got about 12 or 13, I put on some mascara, and he said, I never thought a daughter of mine would wear that shoe polish on her eyes. And it was just that sort of thing. And so there was no drinking in our house. Once a year, mother would buy a bottle of Mogan David wine and she'd hide it in the back of the cupboard and say, that's to make the fruitcake moist. So it was that kind of deal. And I just saw a lot of hypocrisy about people who would puff up their church and say, I'm a Christian. I go to church every Sunday. And then they'd treat people like, you know what, all week long. And I had a trouble with that as a kid. And so for years I ran from all religion, and then I checked out all religions. And then finally I found Unity, and it's like, oh, I'm home. So it was certainly right for me. It maybe not right for everyone, but for me, this was it. So when they first started out, the Fillmores didn't want it to be a church. They just wanted it to be an education or a teaching center where people could go to their own church, wherever that might be, and come here afterwards to get further enhancement of what they're already experiencing in their other centers. But people in Unity were going, no, we want church, or we want spiritual centers, and so finally they gave in and said, okay, but if you do that, we need to be consistent that we're all teaching the same teachings. And over the years, it's not necessarily still consistent. There's just, like I say, some are more progressive and some are much more, let's say, traditional. But what I found in my classes where we had to study all religions in seminary, and I found that in all religions, there's a continuum where all of them have a more traditional end, and they also have a more mystical end. And there's a lot of variations in between in all religions. So it's hard to define. So, whoops. So what about the Bible then? Most of us believe that the Bible is about stories, parables, metaphors. I can't see that last word because the pictures of you guys are covering it up. Let's see. Not necessarily historically accurate, but it's about the evolution of our consciousness as a human race. Some people, like the Fillmores, believe the Bible was a story of our generation, our degeneration, and our regeneration. And some believe that the characters in the Bible and the parables and the stories, they're all symbols, and of every character even is a symbol that represents what is in our minds. And it tells us how we can solve our life's problems, how we can live a better life. So that's the way a lot of us approach the Bible. Like, what good is it if we can't use it in our life? So we're a very practical religion in that we like to say, here's how you do it. And Jesus showed us how. He was the master teacher. He was our model. He was the prime example. And he says that if we do these things, we can do what he did. And what he did was he recognized his own divine aspect to himself, his own divinity, as a creation of God. So, how does that sound? Does that need any questions or anything?
Makes sense.
Okay, makes sense. Okay. We believe that Jesus was a man who came to the deep realization of his true identity, his Christ-like nature. He's our model. He showed us the way, how to do it, how to live it. You can read it and intellectualize about it up here all the time, but how to live it. Otherwise, what good is it? So we believe in following the teachings of Jesus, and Jesus said we are like him. Let's see. My cousin, who has gone Pentecostal, attacked me on Facebook not long ago. And he said, do you believe that Jesus is the Son of God? And I went, yeah. And so are we. All creatures, we are all created by God. But he didn't like that at all. So he went on to continue attacking me. So that's just the same kind of hypocrisy that I've always had trouble with. How about you guys? Have you experienced any of that?
Yes, I find that with a lot of Christian people that I know, they're very focused on being saved by Jesus Christ. And if you're not saved, then you're not part of their religion. And yeah, I find that very, it's not very nice when you exclude other people from different faiths.
Right?
Yeah.
And to me, the way we are saved is by following his example. You know, that we save ourselves by choosing to do what he did, by choosing to follow his teachings, and not saved out of sin or hell, but just saved to have a better life, you know? So maybe we don't even want to use the word saved. We could just say, just following his teachings is a saving grace to us, because it allows us to have the life that we're meant to have. It doesn't have to be the troubled life that we sometimes have. So we believe Christ then is a name or a title that was applied to the man, Jesus of Nazareth, Jesus the Christ. We believe Christ is the I am of all of us. It was the I am of Jesus, the man who realized his divine identity, his divine nature, the divine aspect of himself, or the Christ of God invisible. So here are some words that I have come up with that when people ask me what unity is, I use about 5 of these words, and people go, oh yeah, we're spiritual, more spiritual than religious. Religion is, organized religion, and spiritual is more, we have our own relationship with the divine, or with our higher self, or we don't care what you call it. Well, some unity ministers do, but I don't care what you call it. It's spirit, it's divinity, it's your higher self, it's God, it's, what do you call it? That energy, that divine energy that is the life force running through us and everything else. What do you call it? I'm asking.
Spiritual for me.
Okay.
And interfaith really resonated with me as well. My husband's Hindu. I grew up Unitarian, but then, I was baptized Catholic when I was a baby. So
yeah,
that makes a lot of sense to me.
Okay.
You have a right to be mixed up.
You have a right to be mixed up, and yeah.
Or, there's so many similarities between the religions, as you mentioned, that many of the stories that are told in the different religious texts are very similar. So
Yeah.
I see more of similarity than a difference between all the different religions.
There you go. Let's see. Diverse. We're a diverse community. We're very inclusive in that we don't judge what your life is right now or what it has been. Gay. I don't care what color your skin is, what your sexual orientation is, or any of that. We're a very diverse community in that we welcome everyone, no matter. And because we believe those seeds of the divine are in each and every person, and it just gets covered up with all this human stuff. And a lot of it we've been taught to believe, and we wanted to please people when we were little, and so we go, okay, oh duh. And now we're grown-ups going around with believing these things even about ourselves that just are not true. So I had this one guy who'd been imprisoned for a long time, and he finally got out, and he had done horrific things, and he was telling people how he turned his life around. And he said to me, Sheila, you mean even I have seeds of God in me? I said, yes, Jesse, yes. So, anyway, anthropomorphism is a term that means we don't believe that God is in human form, like a man sitting out in the clouds in the sky somewhere on a throne, doling out punishments or rewards. We don't believe that God is in the form, looks like a man. We believe it's an energy or something different. So it's not anthropomorphism. We're very practical, hands-on, down to earth. We use this. We don't just read about it, intellectualize about it. We do it. We're very inclusive. We are from the New Thought movement, which also Unitarian is, and religious science and Christian science. And the New Thought movement have roots in Ralph Waldo Emerson and his idea of transcendentalism. So all of these churches have roots in that, but there are minute differences, which we'll talk about in a minute. So we're more into mysticism. And other things that make us different are we are into affirmative prayer. We totally believe there's no wrong way to pray, but we really think affirmative prayer is the most effective way to communicate with God. It's just like zip right to that source inside us that is our place where we commune with source or God or whatever you want to call it. Affirmative prayer doesn't beg for you to get rid of this pain or beg for this to go away or this to come into my life, but instead we affirm what's already true. We say, even in saying the words, we know that the mighty work is already being done. So it's kind of like having a faith. It's already there. All we have to do is just say, I recognize it's already there. I like to combine prayer and meditation together. We're very much into meditation and going inside. Charles Fillmore used to call it, I go inside to my headquarters. And in the Bible, I think it talks about this place called the secret place of the Most High that's in each and every one of us, that's ours and ours alone, that nobody else can enter. It's your personal relationship with God. So Charles Fillmore used to call that, I'm going into my headquarters to find the answer. I'm not listening to all these people out here that think they have it all figured out and then try to rape me with cramming their views or their opinions down my throat. I'm going to headquarters, and we all can do that. It's as close as our hands and feet. It's as close as our next breath. It's right here, the answers. So meditation, going into the silence. We have something called the 12 powers that Charles Fillmore didn't invent. They were in existence long before he came along, but he found a way to expand upon those and show us how, and we use these 12 powers unconsciously all the time, sometimes to our detriment. And so if we learn how to use these 12 powers in a conscious way with intention, we can use them to have a much more joy-filled life. And there are things like faith, imagination, imagining what we would like our lives to be. Things like, well, let's see, choice, making choices. So I won't go into those today because it's pretty complicated, but they're just beautiful tools to use consciously. We're into panentheism instead of pantheism. Panentheism means going beyond. Well, I think I have that on the next slide. Let me put a hold on that one for a minute so it'll be more clear. We're also into oneness with God and with each other. There's no separation. When we think we're separated from that God source and that God energy, that's when we suffer. And we make the mistake of believing we are separated because we've been taught that. And so when a lot of times, like when I found unity, I went into what they call chemicalization, where I was angry and crying. And my professor in seminary at the time said, good, go ahead, do that. Because what's happening there is that your embedded theology that you grew up with, whoever got a hold of you first, is now clashing with this new way of seeing things, and it's causing you to be all confused. And in in psychology we would call that dissonance within yourself. So yeah, and I saw other students doing the same thing. So that oneness, there's no separation. At one time, the Fillmores believed in reincarnation and vegetarianism, and some still do and others don't. So I don't know what to tell you about that, except it's not what we're all about, but a lot of unity people do believe in reincarnation. So I said to my grandson a while back, we were talking about it, and I said, well, why none of us really knows for sure about that, or where we go when we die, or whatever, what happens, but we all have beliefs that we've taken on. And for me, reincarnation has a good resonance within me, and I certainly don't want to close my mind to the possibility that it could be true. So, and I said, I don't know for sure, and neither do you. So that's all I can tell you about that. So unity has basically 5 principles. God is, I am, I think, I pray, I live it, or I do it. So let's start with God is. There's only one power and one presence, and it is good, and that is God. There's only one, and it is good. Number 2, I am. I am because you are, and we all are, a divine expression of that one power. So that must mean that at the basic level, at my divine, the level of my divinity, I am good. Now, when I get into my human ego and make mistakes of thinking other things and not putting my eyes toward divine, that's what we would consider would be an error state of thinking. And that's what some people might call sin. Sin is from the Greek word in archery, which means to miss the mark. So when we miss the mark, we get into thinking, oh, I'm terrible, I'm not worthy, I'm all these things. And when we realize that, we just gently bring ourselves back on point, onto the path of realizing that's all lies that we've learned from other people in childhood, and they simply are not true. I have a good in me that surpasses all that. So let's see. Number 3, as divine expressions, we are active participants in the creation of our life experiences, meaning that what you think and what you feel is what you're going to get back. And that's what's going to be, what your life is going to look like, is going to be like. It's going to reflect back to you, and that's going to be what you're going to experience. So if my thoughts are that I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, then that's what I'm going to experience. If my thoughts are, I am of divine and I know I have a human nature and my desire is to merge those two together so that there's one will, my human desires merge with the will of God desires, then that's what I experience. Much more peaceful, much more joyful, such a relief. So we create what we experience in our lives through our thoughts and our feelings. Number 4, through affirmative prayer and meditation, we consciously anchor the good in our lives. So we anchor the good that is already there. And prayer and meditation are the quickest ways to get there. And number 5, we must activate these truths in our day-to-day lives. We can sit around and woo-woo all day long and meditate and all this stuff, but if we don't live it, act on it, if we don't be it, then it's not going to happen for a better life. So if you do want me to email these slides to you, let's see, I have, Susan, I think I have your contact info, and Patty, I have yours. I can get yours, Amy, if you want these. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So in our youth program, we have 5 principles for children. So we've just rewritten them. God is all good and active in everything, everywhere. There is no place where God is not. In you and in you, through you, around you, in the whole universe. I am naturally good because God's divinity is in me and everyone. Those seeds are there. I create my experiences by what I choose to think and what I feel and believe. Through affirmative prayer and meditation, I connect with God and bring out the good and the God in my life. And I do and give my best by living the truth I know. I make a difference. So the ones for children are a bit simplified, but yet I like them. I go to these a lot. So again, principle number 1, God is all good and active in everything, everywhere. God is. Now, I don't remember why I put this slide in. I think it was because in the divine realm, not the human realm, our ego, personality, but the divine realm, it's solid. It's solid footing. It's there. Nothing ever changes. It's a truth that is real, no matter. Like north is always north. This equation is always true. So in the divine God realm of being, nothing ever changes. It's solid. You can count on it. In the human realm, on the other hand, it's always changing. So I think that's why I had this slide up. So this is where I was going to talk about the difference between theism, pantheism, and panentheism. Theism believes that there's a supreme God that watches over the universe. Pantheism believes that God is the universe. Panentheism, which is us, believes that God is the universe and beyond and transcends that and permeates everything beyond the universe. It's the energy in everything that is and ever was and ever will be. So it's just a bit more comprehensive. Panentheism goes beyond pantheism. God is the universe and also interpenetrates aspects of the universe and transcends it. Principle number 2, I'm naturally good because God's divinity is in me and everyone. So Eric Butterworth, who is a really famous Unity minister from New York, wrote a book. He's written a bunch of books, but the one that's really some of our basics. Oh shoot, I hate when my mind does that. I have to let go. It'll come back. He says the true affirmation is I am. The key to Jesus' power was his realization of the I am. Not I want to be, not I hope to be, not I will someday be, but simply I am. Right here, right now. That's the basis of affirmative prayer. It's already here. We just need to have faith and acknowledge it and claim it. So the Christ, our divine potential and true identity, the God self in each person, the true spiritual higher self in every individual. I got this definition from the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary that Charles Fillmore wrote. And it's a wonderful resource. Principle number 3, I create my experiences by what I choose to think and feel, what I feel and what I believe. So this goes to what we call the law of mind action, meaning all circumstances are expressions of the thoughts and emotions which are attracted to us according to what we hold in consciousness. So if I hold in consciousness negativity all the time, that is going to be attracted back to me. Not that we do spiritual malpractice and go along thinking, oh, everything's great. I feel great. I'm so happy, when we're not. And not that we deny that stuff happens in our lives that doesn't feel good. But what we deny is the power that we gave to it. And we take that power back. And so we don't want to do spiritual malpractice and say, oh, you're sick because you're not thinking the right thoughts. We don't want to do that to ourselves or other people. Again, that's spiritual malpractice. We don't deny that stuff happens in life that just doesn't feel good, but we learn how to transcend that and go beyond it to a much better way of experiencing our lives. It doesn't have to be what many of us experience. Individually and collectively in our own individual lives. And when we work on taking care of that kind of stuff in front of us, inside ourselves, healing those things in ourselves that are causing us to have suffering and pain, unknowingly our energy changes and it helps the rest of humankind. And people know our energy. They can feel it. And well, you know that, don't you know, have you experienced that where someone comes in and you just feel good around them and you don't know maybe why? Anyway, there's something in Charles Fillmore's writings called race consciousness. And he means human race consciousness. And that's all the consciousness of all the thoughts that have been going and feelings that have been going on. There's a collective consciousness that impinges on us all the time too. So we do our work, but then we become more conscious, more aware of when we're being impinged upon by that consciousness that's out in the ethers, that's also impinging on us. And when we heal ourselves, we heal that, all of our ancestors as well. Change your consciousness, you change your life, you change the world. So this thing of evolving our consciousness, becoming more aware, and working on those things is so important for a happy life. So principle number 4, through affirmative prayer and meditation, I connect with God and bring in all the good in me, in my life and in me. I love this statue of Jesus meditating. It sort of, for me, brings together the Eastern and the Western philosophies. I have actually one of these in my house. I love bringing together Eastern and Western religions. And prayer, the most highly accelerated mind action known. Can you guys see that whole slide, or is it covered up by the pictures of us like it is for me?
No, we can see it.
You can? Okay.
Or I can anyway.
I can see it.
See, I have you guys' pictures down the side of my screen and it's covering up part of the slide. Oh, well. Steps up mental action until our consciousness synchronizes with the Christ mind. Human merges with the divine. Pictures down the side of my screen and it's covering up.
I can,
slide.
Sheila, I can see it too. I can see it. Can you hear me?
Steps up mental action until our consciousness synchronizes with the Christ mind. Are you? Human merges with the divine. Talking. Pictures down the side of my screen and it's covering up.
I can
turn off your
Sheila, I can see it too. I can
your
see it.
volume on your
Can you
Facebook.
hear me?
Steps up mental action until our consciousness. I'm going to stop sharing these. Wait a minute here. Participants. Oh, Monica, you're with us too on your phone. Great. Okay, so I'm going to mute everyone, okay? All right, maybe this will be better. Great. Okay, so I'm going to mute everyone, okay? Still hearing my echo, huh? All right, maybe this will be better. Great. Okay, so I'm going to mute everyone, okay? I don't know what's still hearing my echo, huh? All right, maybe this will be better. Wow. See if I'm on Facebook Live. Nope, I'm not. So I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on. Maybe this will be better. Wow. See. Okay, let's see if this works better.
Yeah, I believe it was just me. Yeah, I would stop it because it was just me.
Okay.
I think I was the only one on Facebook Live.
Okay. All right, so let's see here. Let's see where I was. Okay. So, a prayer. Oh, I've done that one, right? Okay. It's more than begging. It's an affirmation of a truth that eternally exists already, but which has not yet come into consciousness. It comes into consciousness not by pleading, but by affirming. I know this is already true. So the heart of unity affirmative prayer is God is, I am, and therefore I can. Meditation purpose is to expand our consciousness Christward. Keeping our eyes to that which is good and pure and innocent and Christ-like. Always our eye toward that which is divine. To bring into realization a divine truth, the reality of the absolute realm, which is never changing. It's the solid rock upon we can always stand. And be transformed in spirit, soul, and body. Spirit, soul, and body by the renewing of the mind. Principle number 5 then is we be it, we act on it. So again, Unity's 5 principles. God is, therefore I am, I think, and that's why I experience what I think, I pray, and I live it, I do it. Need a whole class in these 5 principles, I tell you, to see how it works in our lives. But so have you seen this this symbol in Unity? Have any of you seen this symbol? We used to have one. Patty, you probably would have seen it because it was in the room where they did A Course in Miracles. It was up on the wall of eagle's wings with Unity. People ask me, what does that mean? It means the perfect soul. It symbolizes the mind conscious of its spiritual origin and power, the soul in its flight back to the supreme, its original source in the bosom of absolute love and wisdom. Absolute meaning never changing. The winged globe or sun disk represents the relation existing between spirit, soul, and body. Soul are the wings, and that's what gives the wings the body, the disc, and the spirit is the invisible enveloping principle, the energy, the life energy, like the atmosphere in which both soul and body exist. I know this is a bunch of intellectual kind of talk, but people always ask about that, so I wanted to include a little bit of it here. When people of the earth lift up their thoughts to God, then the planet takes wings into a higher radiation of universal life.